long time no see. Quick video, 3 quick topics. Actually 2. That's the Dan Clark Audio Stealth right there. That'll be a video coming up. I heard a lot of good things about it, decided to grab it. Paid full retail price, about $4 grand for it. Talk about that when I do the video. This is the latest BLON. It's called the BL-MAX, I believe. Let's admire that they're using a measuring tool when they make this stuff, and I think all the BLONs are versions of good depending on your library, but they're not just throwing drivers into shells and saying, hey, look at this is awesome. They actually are tuning it, and I've noted that in previous versions as well. It's your thing or not, depends on your library and what you like, but they are tuning it. This is the 2 drivers that are inside. Massive benefit to having that. By the way, I'll be talking about the Mele in a few minutes, so this is just the intro to the BL-MAX. They're using a 10mm and a 6mm, I believe, and it might be they took the driver from the Mini and also the driver from the A8, the Prometheus, and they put them together and put them in a single set, and they're going to call it the BL-MAX. Now, the benefit to doing that is obvious, but let me explain it to you anyway. When you use a single dynamic driver, you're tasking, unlike a home system or a car system or most any other system, you're tasking a single transducer to do the whole replay, to do the sub bass, the mids, the upper mids, the treble. That's okay, but it can have its limitations and they can become clear depending on your library. If you listen to music that has substantial events in the low frequency, sub bass or mid bass, there's a high probability that that is going to interfere with the quality or the perception of everything that follows. That's the mids, the upper mids, the treble, vocals, guitars, electric guitars, pianos, most everything that's not fundamentally based in the sub bass and mid bass is going to be beyond that. And particularly vocals can be impacted by that. So if you've got a single dynamic driver like the BLON 03 or like many other sets, and you have a significant hit like in trip hop or hip hop, or you have a bass guitar that's produced to be loud and upfront, you might not be able to enjoy the high quality replay of everything else, because it's a single dynamic driver, and depending on its quality, it's in a plastic shell, a resin shell, the way it's positioned, it's got open BAs next to it. There's a lot of variables that can go on to taking it from barely able to do its job to not doing its job very well, and you can pick that up. Now, when you take another driver, like they're doing with the Max, and you take the upper mids and the treble, likely, I don't know where the crossover point is, and you dedicate that to another driver, like they do with balanced armature sets. They separate the frequency areas, actually more than this sometimes, so that even if a particular area is being overwhelmed with a lot of info, the other areas are crossed over and separated, so they shouldn't be impacted. Technically, though your ears might not be able to perceive it. For example, if you have an all-BA set and you're really bassing out, it might sound like the rest of it is shit, but that's just because you can't pick it up over the din of the exaggerated low frequency. So multiple drivers have great benefits, but there's a limitation to when your hearing just can't separate what's going on. It's there, you can't catch it though. By taking another driver and putting it up in the upper mids and treble, and in the mids, I'm still in the honeymoon phase, but there's certain moments like Sultans of Swing where I'm listening to the bass. This is Dark Wish You Were Here that was turned on to me by a dude in Discord. Thank you very much. I figured I'd thank you publicly because it's a really, really good version, and I'm enjoying it right now. Let me go back to something like Dire Straits' Sultans of Swing for a second. On a single dynamic set, when the bassist is elevated or there's too much mid-bass, Mark Knopfler, the guitarist and lead singer, can be audibly impacted, and your brain burn accepts that as not being ideal, but the tonality is so great and the timbre and everything else is good. When you separate it, it sounds like on a set like this, for example, that part of guitar for Mark sounds a little bit better on this set than it does on the BLON 03. I'm not going to put Mele into this just yet because a lot of you are still waiting to get your set, but you might be familiar with the 03. I think that this is clearly doing a better job at representing upper frequency, mids and beyond than the 03 itself, and I think that's kind of goes without saying because you've got an additional muscle to go ahead and do the work. So the BLON BL-MAX is a nice maturation of the brand to go from a single and a micro and another, you know, the 05 and then the 05S, and that was kind of like beating a dead horse, like Tin Hi-Fi is kind of doing currently. I hate to say that, but the T2 this, the T2 that, eventually you move on and be creative, and that's what they're doing here. You go from several versions of like a 10 millimeter, and then you go to a micro that slides right in your ear. Now you go into a dual dynamic set. I think it's a very clever idea. To my ears so far, I think it sounds really good. The bass is done great, and it sounds to my ears like the upper frequencies are done better as well. How much of that is in my mind and I'm expecting it to be that way and therefore it's becoming that way, expectation bias, it could be. But it sounds good to me, and I'll do a full review when it comes out and it's confirmed to be that tuning. I'm pretty sure it will be, but I can't say 100% for sure. The next thing that I'll talk about, so that's it. Questions below, and click notifications and subscribe, and when this BL-MAX drops, you'll be the first to know. Next topic will be the Mele, and that is this set right here. Let me go ahead and go back. That was this one. Stop this. This set right here was built around my library, and when I did this video and I talked about it, let me go ahead and mute it and talk about, I broke this down into the graph and then into the mids and then into the treble, and then I did an outro and I explained using my library how I tuned it. I wanted bass to be clean and clear, better than the 03. I wanted drum play to be good. I wanted male and female vocals to be good, and I wanted it to be non-fatiguing. I had a target, and that target was built around a particular music library that includes, there's Eazy-E, there's Def Leppard, that's I guess 80s rock, there's Dire Straits, I think that's 80s or 70s, Earth, Wind & Fire, Electric Light Orchestra, David Lee Roth, Cheap Trick, Tupac Shakur, Bob Marley. My library is how I came about the tuning of my set. I'm very confident that people that share my library, or there's an overlap, are going to be able to appreciate the set. Now, if you listen to other genres like K-pop or J-pop, and they're produced differently, and they're focusing on other things more, like female vocals is maybe a bigger part of your library than mine, the possibility that it doesn't hit the target is there. Because I wasn't really, people say you limit your potential because you're so specific with your library. And I would argue that it's kind of the opposite. I actually excel because I do that. Because while I might not appeal to everybody lightly, I appeal strongly to a smaller group because I'm specific, and I talk about the bass line on a Black Sabbath track. And somebody they know that track. They know that and can access it immediately with their gear and say, oh, I know what that dude's talking about. So while I kind of am limiting myself to a broader audience and bigger growth, I'm solid with where I am and who listens to me because I'm very specific. So the Hana took a lot of time. There were several driver coatings that were considered, or types, and a set that was sent, and it was never going to come to market for reasons that are not related to me. The driver was used because it was able to resolve this bass and the way that it played back vocals, though it needed a few retunes. I wanted something that would last, you could listen to it for a couple hours without thinking about, I'm getting tired of those vocals. Because that area that it's notched at is where I found it to be fatiguing. And when I pulled it down there, it alleviated it right there. Like, that's why other companies do it on purpose, accidentally. I don't know, but I think it's probably intentional tuning because I went with that myself, because it's more towards long-term listening, which is really what this is designed for. And I'm talking about the Hana now. So I targeted people specifically, and also, again, didn't send it out to reviewers because I don't know that any other reviewers out there share really my library. So they would be interpreting what I built for my library. It doesn't play just this, but with different voices. I'd rather people that say, I know that dude, I like his library, I'm gonna buy that set, get it, come back, feedback, and say, what the fuck, bro? That doesn't sound anything like what you said it was. Or what has actually happened in the past 7 days is, dude, you nailed it. I'm listening to Freebird from One More From the Road by Leonard Skinner, and I'm having one of those moments. And like, that was the group that I was targeting. And I hit that target. Everything else is gravy. You know what I mean? There's a lot of ways to tune stuff, and I guess in every sense you're targeting a certain group when you do so. A lot of people that listen to K-pop, J-pop, Vocaloid or something would be a different tuning with more energy in the treble. I was going for something different from that. If you bought the Mele, thank you very much. If you enjoyed it, thank you. I'm very, very happy for you. This is all about the music. You know, this is why I'm here. This is why this station is designed the way it is. This is why I talk about the music when I talk about what I like or I dislike about something. If you listen to me, also one more point. I've heard people say that, for example, headphones.com or Critical or another person said that item A or item B is not good. And I've watched the video or I read the review, and it looks like sometimes people take the conclusion and that's the sum total of what they know about what they're talking about. Like they skip to the end and don't understand how that came about. There's a lot more to it, and if you watch my video about the Mele, you will have known that I built it around my library, and you will have known that I was targeting certain songs and things that I deemed as difficult for a lot of things to do. I wanted a set that would do that well. The cymbal strikes that are on Can't Find My Way Home is 27 and 38. To be specific, I wanted those to sound natural to my ears, and I want to tune in that way. The Black Sabbath bass pulls wanted to. So it seems like some people watched the video at the end, or they just took someone else's opinion and then bought it and then said, this isn't for me. Watch the videos, please, mine or others, and get the reason for the conclusion, and that would be better info than just the conclusions. I mean, that's automatic. It's like reading the end of a book and then doing your book report. When you watch a person's review, listen to the meat of it, the middle, the content, because that is why the conclusion was gotten to. And then you might get to the end and think, I get his conclusion, but based on what he said, I gotta disagree with him, for good or bad, either way. So listen carefully and listen throughout. I'll try to make my videos not too long like I just fucking did to this one. But if you watched my video about the Mele, you will have known that this was really targeting my library. And while that might seem foolish to you, there's a lot of people that like rock and roll. There's a really lot of people that like rock and roll and hip hop and reggae and trip hop. And my library actually has a big audience. So it's a limiting factor, but I'll deal with that. And again, thank you very much for the people that bought Mele. Please click notifications and subscribe. Please leave your comments below, good or bad. Thank you for the purchase. I appreciate the trust that you gave me, whether you feel like it was trust that was it was a good idea that you followed or it wasn't. Please leave it below. And the BLON BL-MAX will be coming up as soon as I get confirmation of the final packaging and confirmation of the final tuning. As it sits right now, that one right there, very nice. Sounds like what I think that, let me give one final thing. This many BAs, hybrid, dynamic driver taking care of the low end. I would argue that more companies should play with multiple dynamics, because the authenticity and the reality and that bass that you think that sounds a little more realistic than a BA. It's the same in the upper frequencies. It's why the Z1R is so special. It's nothing else to me except the micro tweeter is taking care of the frequencies in the treble and upper mids in a way that a lot of sets don't. That's one of the special sauces of the Z1R. Why more companies don't play with multiple dynamic sets, and some people have. I think they put too much emphasis up in the treble when they don't need to. They ought to lean on the tonality overall as opposed to specific targeting, and use libraries when you do that, and maybe explain to the buyers what kind of libraries were used to come to. You might limit your audience, but you'll have a solid fucking army in that limited audience because you told them why you tuned it that way and what music you used to tune it that way, and you'll get them. So a lot of sets end up with their niche anyway. Why not preempt that by saying this is built for, and then target? Mele was built for my library. Target. Many sold. Many people happy. I think it was a good idea. Maybe some other companies should try intentional targeting instead of this is good for everybody, because it's not working out that way. And I'm out. Thank you guys for your patience. Multiple videos coming up next week. And I'm out. And that is not stealth, because you shouldn't be able to see it.